Good morning, everyone. How are you? It is Saturday morning. I was supposed to do this video yesterday, but you know, Christmas, it's a little chaotic. It's the craziest time of the year, but they say it's the most wonderful time of the year, and it is. But it's also crazy because you're trying to fit everything in, and we went shopping yesterday to try to get our last minute Christmas stuff all together. And I thought we'll wrap that up and I'll run and do my video. And it was afternoon because it was crazy out there. There were people everywhere and it was a Friday. I thought we'll go in the morning when everybody's at work, but that didn't happen. But anyway, late or not, you may not even be watching this till later in the week anyway. So join me. This is my Friday post or video where we go through the 4 Gospels in chronological order. And we are right now at one of my favorite stories in the entire Bible. And probably many women can relate to me that they love this story. So grab yourself coffee or tea or whatever your favorite beverage is. Sit down, grab your Bible. We're going to be in John chapter 4, 1 through 45. We're talking about the Samaritan woman that meets Jesus, or Jesus, he goes to find her as well. I think it was on purpose. And what I want to do, I think, is I want to just talk about it as I read it. So I'm going to break it up quite a bit. So if you haven't read this passage this week, this would be a great time to pause the video and stop and just read it as a whole story first, and then we're going to break it down. So I'll give you a few minutes. So, okay, if you're back and or if you've already read it this week, then we'll get started. I think one of the things that I love about this passage is that it is about a woman that felt like she didn't belong. And I love that about this story. And it's also about a Savior that goes out of his way to reach out to her. And I think that touches my heart, and I hope it touches yours. Have you ever felt like you didn't belong or you just didn't fit? So this woman, we'll see, was going to the well to get water. And the tradition, of course, is that they would normally go, because this is a hot part of the world, in the desert. The women would all go in the morning once to go get water for their day, and in the evening, and that's because it's cooler. Plus they would go in groups for safety, because this is along the road where a lot of strangers are traveling. So a woman by herself would be a little bit at risk to being attacked. So here she is at noon, midday, and she's headed out to get water. And I wonder why. Is it because she wanted to be alone? We'll find out in this passage that she probably wasn't living a life that other women thought was that great. They probably were all gossiping and talking about her behind their back. We're reading into this passage, but it's easy when they add little details in the Bible, like she went at noon, and she went to go gather water, and then later on that she had so many husbands, stuff like that. So even though that's not really written into our passage, we can kind of assume that just by the customs of the day and stuff like that. And as I was preparing this, I realized that I have often felt like this woman. Although I haven't had many husbands, I've got my own stuff. I think no matter where you're at, you've got your own stuff, and you've got your own things that you don't fit in with. And I actually thought about in this video telling you something that I don't tell hardly anybody. Nobody knows about me. And that is that in my high school life, in the about junior year, I had become a very angry and a very just a hard person to be around, and that had to do with the fact that I had some abuse and had some trauma, and I had held that in as a child, and the anger began to well up. And we don't know anything about this Samaritan woman. We all have excuses like, well, I had a hard childhood. Well, I've got trauma. She may have been holding in some grudges. She may have had some really hard husbands. She may have had some abuse in her life that have caused her to search for love. And in my life, what happened about then is I became a very hard teenager to deal with. And so in order to alleviate that they didn't have to deal with me over the summer between my junior and senior year, my parents actually put me in an adolescent care facility for like a mental hospital. And so I, unbeknownst to me, got put in there without my knowledge and stuck in there. When I came out and I went to my youth group to that next Sunday after I got out, nobody would sit with me. And all of my friends that I had been with, our whole, since junior high or even elementary, all of them, they couldn't sit with me. And one of the gals came up and said, I can't sit with you. My parents won't let me sit with you. And that's because they thought, well, she's been to a mental institution, and that is for, troubled teens that have drug, and I didn't have a drug problem. I didn't have a lot of the problems that a lot of people in there had, and yet they had labeled me and they had separated. And I vividly can remember that Sunday sitting all by myself, and my parents made me go to church. So the next year of my life, or year and a half, until I turned 18, was hard because every Sunday I had to go and sit by myself. And I think maybe that's why this story resonates with me, because I'm sure that walk from the city out to the well was quiet and hard for her, because she knew everybody else had gone to get water earlier, and now she's going out to get water all by herself, and she didn't have anybody. And it's a hard place to be, where you don't have anybody that you can count on. And like the woman at the well, Jesus in my later years met with me and became even closer to me and my best friend. And so I feel every part of this story. So I thought what I do is I just read it and then kind of stop and talk about a few of the things. So we, once again, are in John 4, and we are going to start in verse 1. So now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. It's amazing how one sentence in the Bible just kind of alludes to so much stuff. So the Pharisees are actually getting upset because Jesus is becoming popular. And although they're religious leaders, they're wanting everyone to follow them. So that says a lot about the Pharisees, that they have jealousy that Jesus is getting popular. Although, let's see, verse 3. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. So if you remember, he was in Judea baptizing with John the Baptist, and now he's headed back to Galilee, where this is his kind of hometown area. Now he had to go through Samaria. Once again, one sentence that when you really research it, that's a huge sentence. So you had to go through Samaria to get from the north to the south of Israel. However, Jews in this day, because they didn't like the Samaritans, they would do everything possible to go completely around it. They would go hours out of their way through a little bit more mountainy roads just to try to avoid going through Samaria. So when it says that Jesus had to go through Samaria, he didn't have to go physically through Samaria. He could have followed where all the Jews were going. But he had to go means that his spirit was pulled there because he knew he had to meet this woman. And he had basically an appointment. And God has appointments with us, and he reaches out to us at the right time too. So verse 5, so he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar. Now this is, if you look it up on YouTube, and this is also Shechem. So you can, anytime you're searching for Shechem, this is where it's at in Samaria. So it had just been, the name had been changed once it was in Jesus's time, but in Old Testament, this was Shechem. Let's see, so called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given his son Joseph. Joseph's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. So I also put in the description some videos about Jacob's well and that area. You can still visit Jacob's well, and it's not one of the contested sites. This, they know, was Jacob's well. And this is where he was meeting the Samaritan woman. Now, right now, they have a church built over it. But of course, this would have been out in the open air. And you can read about Jacob's story from Genesis 25 to 35. I love to see all the backstories to all of this, because these locations all, like, you know, Old Testament, there's some of the characters are there. And then here we are in Jesus' day, the New Testament, and these same locations they are at. You can find out about Jacob's well. They don't mention it as Jacob's well in the Old Testament, but this is where Jacob actually settled in Genesis 33, verses 18 through 20. And it says it was about noon. We talked about that at the beginning, that they don't often go to the well midday. They would have visited in the morning and in the evening. So verse 7, when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans." So there's more history about the Samaritans. They are what the Jews called a half-breed. Basically, I think it was Assyria had taken over the Jewish, those cities, and had taken the Jews out of Shechem, and then replaced them with some, I think it was Assyrian people. And then the leftover Jews that were there, they ended up marrying these Assyrian people. And what ended up happening is they became like what they considered a half-breed, which I think is funny, because Jesus is kind of a half-breed himself. When we read that Rahab and also Ruth were both not Jewish, and they are in his line. But this had more to do with the fact that they were worshiping other idols, and so the Samaritan people, when they mixed with the other ones, they also worshipped other gods, which was another reason why the Jewish people were so upset with them. So there's a whole history there if you want to read that. I'm telling you, like, one sentence will bring you to a whole history. So Jesus answered her, "If you knew," wait, I gotta go back up. Where did I go? When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone to town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" I just read that, but that's okay. For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God And who it is that's asked you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. So now he's sitting there with nothing to draw water with, or a cup or anything like that. And he's saying, I'm asking you for water, but if you would have known who I am, you would have asked me for living water. Sir, the woman said, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us this well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock? Jesus answered, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give them will never thirst indeed. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life. So Jesus starts to talk about a different kind of water. So the woman says to him, Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. So it's funny because she's thinking it's like magic beans. That's what I was thinking of. What is this magical water that I will drink it and I'll never be thirsty again? I want some of that because I'm getting tired of going here and hauling all this water back to camp, basically. So he told her, go call your husband and come back. I have no husband, she replied. Jesus said to her, you are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband. What you have said is quite true. He basically just told her entire life story. And she's like, I don't even know you, and you know everything about me. Who are you? So she says, Sir, the woman said, I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place where we must worship is in Jerusalem. So as soon as he hits a chord, as soon as he's like, I know about your past, and I know who you are, and he touched a little too deep, she avoids the question and does kind of a smoke screen and takes him on to a complex argument that's going on between the Jews and the Samaritans, and that is where they worship. And so there in Samaria, near Shechem, they worshipped on Mount Gerizim. I also included some great videos on Mount Gerizim. Now that I've been studying the Bible, or the Old Testament, Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal are an incredible story that you're gonna want to read. Basically, I put that in the description so you can look those up. But basically, Moses in Deuteronomy 11:26, he is about to let them enter the promised land, but he's not going to go with them. So he starts to direct them. When you get into the promised land, the first thing I want you to do is I want you to go to Mount Gerizim and Mount Ebal near Shechem. And I want you to put half of the tribe of Israel on one mountain and half on the other. It's this town that has like a valley, and that's where Shechem sits. And then there's like a hill kind of mountain here and a hill mountain here. And so he instructs them to put half on this and half on that, and then they are to yell blessings and curses. So Mount Gerizim is the mountain that they yell the blessings. Like, if you do what God tells you to do, these are the blessings God's going to give you. And then on Mount Ebal, they yelled the curses. In other words, if you don't follow after one God and you do this, and this, God's going to curse you. So you want to follow after God and give him your whole heart. And then you can also read about that in Joshua 8:30-35, and that's when they actually enter the promised land and they fulfill and do what Moses told them to do. So Joshua has them all on the mountain, and they say all of the blessings and the curses. And then at the end of Joshua, he's about to die, and it's many, many years down the road, but he gathers the entire nation back to Shechem. and he reminds them. He stands in Shechem and he says, it's that famous, as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. He basically gives them a speech. It's a wonderful speech about what are you going to do? From this point on, you can decide you're going to follow God and or you can go your own way. As for me and my house, we're going to follow God. And you can imagine, once you've read the story about these mountains, that he's probably standing with the mountains behind him and all of Israel in front of him. And he's basically saying, you can have the blessings, you can choose to follow God, or you can choose to be cursed by God. What's your choice? Because our family, we're all gonna get the blessings. And so when you get that in mind before you read this, now you see that the Samaritan people have actually built their temple and their worship center on Mount Gerizim. So that all starts to make sense. But now the Jewish people are upset with them because the true worship center is supposed to be in Jerusalem or at the headquarters, and that's where all the Jews go. So there's that battle. So that's what's going on behind the scenes, but you can see some of those videos. I've also linked a bunch of wonderful videos, and you can do some extra reading there. I promise you, it'll just bring it to life. So let's see. Now in verse 21, he says, "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews." He's basically saying that the Messiah is supposed to come from the Jews, and you're not supposed to be worshiping on that, but it doesn't really matter if you're worshiping on Mount Gerizim or Jerusalem, because soon he's going to say, true worshipers, watch these, "Yet a time is coming, and now will come, when the true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and truth." In other words, a time is coming that you're not going to be worshiping on that mountain or in Jerusalem. The worship is going to be in spirit. You can worship him in your own spirit. He can be with you. It's kind of also talking about that the Spirit is going to come. And then also in heaven, we're not going to be worshiping at any church location or any temple location. We are going to be worshiping God the Father right in front of him. We get to worship him. So the woman said, "I know the Messiah, called Christ, is coming." She doesn't know she's talking to him. "When he comes, he will explain everything to us." In other words, I don't know what you're talking about, but I know the Christ and the Messiah is coming. When he comes, he'll explain everything. In other words, okay. Then Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, am he." Do you think her eyes opened at that moment? Like, wait, what? I'm standing here in front of the Messiah, the Christ? That probably was a pretty amazing moment. And then she's thinking, well, he did know my past. He knows who I am. What is he talking about? So just then, of course, inconveniently, they're in a deep conversation. And have you ever noticed when you're in a deep conversation, that's when people come and interrupt? It's like it's just getting good. Just then his disciples returned and were surprised to find him talking with a woman. First of all, men in those days didn't talk to women, especially alone in public, because the wrong ideas could be, thought about. So they were like, he's over there talking to a woman. He's breaking all the rules. And she's a Samaritan woman, and he's a Jew. So he has basically broken everything. He doesn't care about restrictions. He doesn't care about pretenses or what people are going to say. Jesus goes right to the heart of the matter. So no one asked him, "What do you want?" or why are you talking to her? Then leaving her water jar, so immediately she leaves her water jar, the woman went back to the town and said to the people, Come, see the man who told me everything I ever did. Could this be the Messiah?" They came out of the town and made their way toward him. Meanwhile, his disciples urged him, "Rabbi, eat something." But he said to them, "I have food to eat that you know nothing about." Then his disciples said to each other, "Could someone have brought him food?" I love that he's always, I don't know if he has a little bit of a sense of humor, but he's telling them truths, but he'll tell them to confuse them all the time. And I just think that's like a little bit of a comedy act, that they're like, he has food? Why does he have food? But he's talking about spiritual food or spiritual hunger. Could someone have brought him food? "My food," said Jesus, "is to do the will of him who sent me and to finish his work. Don't you have a saying? It is still 4 months until the harvest. I tell you, open your eyes and look at the fields. They are ripe for the harvest. Even now, the one who reaps draws a wage and harvests a crop for eternal life, so that the sower and the reaper may be glad together. Thus the saying, one sows, another reaps, is true. I sent you to reap what you have not worked for. Others have done the hard work, and you have reaped the benefits of their labor." He basically is now talking about the harvest and what you hunger after, and that the harvest is ready. People are ready to accept the Lord. In this years after COVID, I feel like people could be ready more than ever before. They've got anxiety, they got depression, the world seems scary around them. Are they ready? Is the harvest ready for them to find Jesus? He has the living water. And I put a bunch of verses about God being the living water and God quenching our thirst, and also about us hungering after God. What are you hungering after? What are you thirsting for? Are you always chasing something, you're like that next thing, trying to fulfill love in your life? Are you chasing after someone because you want to be loved? Are you chasing after success because you want to feel important? What are you hungry for? What do you find yourself drawn to? God, or Jesus, is actually saying here that you should be hungering and thirsting after God, and hungering and thirsting after helping other people find God. So I'm in verse 39. Many of the Samaritans from that town believed in him because the woman's testimony. He told me everything I ever did. So when the Samaritans came to him, they urged him to stay with them, and he stayed 2 more days. And because of his words, many more became believers. They said to the woman, "We no longer believe just because of what you said. Now we have heard for ourselves, and we know that this man really is the Savior of the world." The Samaritan woman, a woman who had many husbands, who was rejected, who felt like she didn't belong, became the very first missionary for Christ. She immediately went out and told everybody. And when Jesus does something and changes your life, you can't help but run out and you want to tell everybody. And they don't want to, sometimes they don't want to hear, and it's so frustrating because you're like, I know this peace. I know this just reassurance that God's with me. I feel this love, and I want to share it so that other people can have it. And when people don't want that, it's really, really hard. But she had success. She brought them to Jesus. She didn't, her words made them interested in what Jesus had to say, but she brought them to the feet of the cross. That's what I want to do. You know, I've often felt like I didn't belong somewhere. I've often felt like I didn't fit. I grew up kind of in a charismatic church, and yet some of that I didn't agree with. And so I like a more traditional church, but then I don't feel like they have the passion. So I feel like I'm in this middle ground that I don't fit. So often when I'm at churches, I don't fit in that group. Also moving here from another state, I've often felt like I didn't fit with some of the people and the families here. And so I often know how I don't fit with the world. And yet Jesus has reached out to me. Jesus has loved me. Jesus has told me who I am in him. Jesus has just healed me and restored me and taken care of me. And I want to spread that around. So no matter where you're at, God will stop by. He'll go out of his way. He'll go through the Samaritan country, or, you know, if it's into a bar, into just wherever you are. If it's into a mental hospital, he'll go with you there, and he'll meet you. And then your job is just to tell others or bring them to him. So I have a busy day today, and so I'm going to head on to my Saturday. My son is moving, so it is moving day, and plus we have a dinner and decorating a tree with my parents, and we have a live nativity tonight. So it's going to be a crazy day, but I wanted to get on here because this is such a powerful story, and I hope that this week you can really spend some time in this passage and spend some time with the videos I have listed below and some of the passages. And I hope you can discover what the living water is, who the living water is, I should say, and how he can bring life to you. And I hope this creates a hunger and a thirst for you to reach out to him. I love you all so much. Have a wonderful Saturday. Have a wonderful Christmas as we enter into our last week before Christmas. And we will see you in the next video. I love you guys so much. Bye.